Utah is at home taking on Oregon. And is Utah going to be able to pull off their second consecutive upset of the season? Because they weren't favored to beat USC, and they obviously should have been because they looked like the better team when they played the Trojans. This week, they're going up against the second best team in the Pac-12 in Oregon. And this game is really tough to predict because on one end, you don't want to count out Utah because even though Utah has all these injuries and they're on their third, fourth string quarterback who was a pig farmer prior to becoming the starting quarterback for this team, you can't count this team out because Kyle Whittingham is just so good of a damn coach. Oregon, yeah, they have the significant talent advantage in this game, but Utah, they're well coached, they're well disciplined, they don't beat themselves, and plus, they got the best damn defense in the Pac-12. If Utah can slow down Oregon's offense, they definitely have a very good chance at being able to pull off this upset. Plus, it also helps that Utah is playing this game at home. And anytime you're playing at home, you're going to have the home field advantage, and it's going to prove to be a big disadvantage to the team that's playing on the road. Bo Nix has been really consistent. This Oregon offense has been consistent all year long. Oregon isn't the same team that USC is. I think with Oregon, you're going to see a team that is going to be way better defensively, and you're also going to see an offense that's just going to be way more efficient. USC had a lot of limitations going into that game against Utah. Their offensive line wasn't that great, and Caleb Williams kind of had to carry that load. For Oregon, this is just a completely all-around great football team. Great offensive line, great quarterback play, great receivers, great running backs, a really good defense that can really get after you. And listen, Bryson Barnes played the best game that we've seen out of him and all the starts that he's gotten for the Utes this year. I found it surprising how Bryson Barnes kind of struggled in his previous games, and then all of a sudden, he goes against Alex Grinch's defense, and he looks like the next great thing at quarterback for Utah. I want to see if Bryson Barnes is going to be able to carry over his performance from last week's win over USC into this game against a way better and a way more complete team. USC wasn't great on the defensive line. Oregon is really good on the defensive line. If you're Utah, you don't want this game to become a game where you got to end up throwing the football to keep up, because this isn't USC. This is Oregon. They got a way better coaching staff, and they got a way better defense. I still think the formula for Utah has to be running the football. Now, Bryson Barnes, yeah, you're going to ask him to make a couple of throws here and there. He's going to need to be. But the run game really has to be the core reason why Utah is able to have success offensively. And their running back core is depleted. Like, Sione Vaki, he's a safety. I didn't even know he was playing safety. I thought he was just another running back. We just haven't seen him. So the fact that they got guys who have to play two different positions, playing out running back, tells you everything you need to know about the injuries that this team has been enduring. And eventually you wonder, when are these injuries going to start to be a factor and a hindrance to Utah? Because Oregon, I mean, they obviously are the way more superior team from a talent standpoint. The thing with Utah is that their defense is so good that even if their offense struggles in this game, as long as their defense shows up, it's going to allow them to stay in the game. And it's going to allow their offense some opportunities to maybe get a couple of big plays here or there. But you can tell that Utah's offense isn't that great because they oftentimes have to revert the trick plays to get the ball rolling. Like, Utah is just trying to find ways to win games. And they got so many different ways that they can beat you. The thing with Oregon is that you can end this game pretty early if you get out to a big lead. If you get out to a 21, 28-point lead at any point during this game, it's over, because Utah is not one of those teams that's built to come from behind, having to deal with a multiple possession deficit. You see, against USC, they were always in that ball game. Against Oregon, though, if Oregon gets up on you by 3-4 touchdowns, then you're really going to have to rely on Bryson Barnes to carry you. And I don't think that's Utah's formula to winning this game. You see, the thing with Utah that has allowed them to overachieve this season, despite all the injuries that they dealt with, is that they still are able to play complimentary football. Even when they didn't have the best quarterback playing, they had the other guy in that quarterback over Bryson Barnes. With how good they were able to run the football, they were able to win games. Against Oregon, Oregon has a pretty good defense. And if you can't run the ball with Jaquindon Jackson, then this game is going to be really difficult for you to be able to win. Because you see, Oregon's secondary is a lot better than USC's. And even though Washington was able to get some big plays on this Oregon secondary, Utah doesn't have the same talent at wide receiver that Washington does. And Utah kind of is outmatched when it comes to skill position in this game. Like, outside of Devon Vele, they don't really have a consistent wide receiver that they can look to throw the football to. They also are without their best weapon on offense, and Brant Kuithe, who still is dealing with an injury. So this doesn't really look like one of those games that Utah is going to be able to win just simply by throwing the football. And when you go back to the win against USC, their running back, Sione Vaki, led the team in receiving yards. So anytime you got a running back that's leading your team in receiving yards by a lot, like how he was, and a lot of his plays came on blown assignments by USC, if Oregon can find a way to limit the production of Utah's running backs, Utah is going to be in a lot of trouble. Because their running backs really are like the main focal point of their offense, rather it be running the football or throwing the football. So if Oregon can shut down Jaquindon Jackson and they can find a way to stop Sione Vaki for having an impact in the pass game that he had last week, Utah is going to be in a lot of trouble offensively because they're not that deep at receiver. They don't really have a lot of talent there, and they're not really a team that's built to come from large deficits. This is a team that is built on playing hard-nosed defense and being a scrappy football team, not beating themselves. You see, Utah is one of those teams that they go into games and they're saying, man, you better not let this game be close going into the fourth quarter because you're going to regret it. Meanwhile, Oregon, you know, if they just go ahead and grab Utah by their neck and just rip them open and they're up 28-7 at halftime, I don't see how Utah is going to be able to come back from that. That's not their style of football. And Oregon, you know, this is my question with them, right? What if this does come a matchup where Utah is able to play their style of football? They're able to, you know, be that physical team. They're able to be that dominant team on the line of scrimmage. And Oregon isn't able to stop the run game. That would be the worst nightmare situation for Dan Lanning and company. Because you see, what Utah wants to do is they want to show their physicality. They're the most physical team in the Pac-12. They remind me a lot of those early 2010 Wisconsin teams. You know, those early 2010 Wisconsin teams, their offense wasn't really anything special. They just were really good up front, and they were really good running the football and playing really good defense. That's the kind of team that Utah is. And that's why Utah has been able to pull up a lot of upsets, because a lot of teams in the Pac-12 simply just don't match Utah's physicality. USC is never able to match Utah's physicality. And I wonder if Oregon is going to fall in line in that same conversation. You see, I don't know just truly how good of a team Oregon is when it comes to being physical, playing a physical style of football. I kind of view Oregon and Washington more so as finesse teams. Now, Oregon does have a really good rushing attack. Bucky Irving is one of the more underrated running backs in all of college football. And if he declares for next year's draft, he's going to be my number one RB. I mean, he's really good after contact. He has really good contact balance, really good vision. And Utah's defense, if they're not able to slow him down, and let's say Bucky Irving gets going, let's say Oregon wants to try to take a playbook out of Utah's playbook, and let's say Oregon wants to go ahead and try to control the clock, and they want to keep Utah's defense on the field and keep Utah's offense off the field, I think that could also be a recipe for Oregon to win this game. I don't think they just need to come out and blow Utah out. I think another way Oregon can beat Utah is by trying to steal what Utah wants to do. Utah wants to be that team to keep your offense off the field, and they want to be that team that can win the time possession battle. But anytime you have an offense that struggles like Utah, you see they need all the possessions that they can get. And Utah's offense is not great. Yeah, they looked good last week because they were playing up against USC, and I know you Utah fans are going to feel like I'm hating on y'all, but y'all watch these games, you know your team, and be honest. You know that Utah is not an offensive juggernaut. You know for Utah to be able to win this game, you got to keep it close. And this has to be a game that is close going into the fourth quarter where you're only down 10 points at most. I'm taking Oregon to win this game. I think they win this game pretty convincingly. I'll say they win this game 35 or 38-17 is my final score prediction. Look, I get that Utah is playing at home. And Utah is a very well-coached football team. And I got a lot of respect for Kyle Whittingham and what he's built at that Utah program. But eventually, you're going to get into a game where you're just going to be inequipped to keep up with some of the more talented teams. And I definitely think that this is going to be one of those games where Oregon just is so more superior talent-wise that Utah's offense, you know, with how abysmal it kind of has been at times, I don't think their great defense is going to be enough for them to stay in this game. You're going to have to be able to put up some points on Oregon. Like, even if you do get a couple of stops, is your offense going to be able to capitalize if you're able to get a couple of turnovers or two on Oregon? Is your offense going to be able to muster enough points where they can keep up with Oregon? Because you see, this isn't going to be one of those games where Utah can be able to win only putting up 17 or 20 points. Like, if you want to win this game, you at least have to be able to put up 27. Yeah, I saw you put up 30 against USC, and you were able to win that game, which was a pretty high-scoring affair, which kind of surprised a lot of people. But you were going up against one of the worst coached defenses in all of college football. Going up against Oregon, you're not going to have that same luxury. You're just playing a better all-around football team, and I definitely think that this is one of those games that is going to get away from Utah due to the lack of talent and the lack of production that they're going to get from their offense. So give me the Oregon Ducks with the win.